The first hit tasted like metal. Maybe it was the blood on my tongue. Maybe it was Ethan's wedding band cracking my cheekbone like steel. The kitchen tube light flickered, throwing our shadows on the wall, 2 paper cutouts fighting without a word. "Look at me, Kai." Ethan's jaw locked, engine grease still in the creases of his hands. "You think you're smarter than command, trying to make me the traitor." I counted breaths the way I do on a night LZ, 4 in, hold 4, 4 out. Inside my left boot, one lace felt thicker than the other. Under the black tape sat a micro SD card. It rubbed my ankle, a reminder that wars don't end. They just change battlefields. Ethan used to be gentle. Somewhere between the first time Blackflag popped up in travel folders and those interagency trainings that booked beach hotels without a single class on the schedule, his smile disappeared. "I already told you," I said, lips swollen so every word scraped like sand. "I write the report exactly as it is." The second hit didn't telegraph. The fridge jumped into my sightline. I clipped the counter. A glass shattered like hail. A photo of us at the squadron BBQ toppled into the trash. Ethan unfolded a crumpled printout. The Cleanup Friday email I'd glimpsed in a 0540 printer log. Someone had cherry-picked Friday's trash and hand-delivered him a medal. "Don't call me a traitor," I said, wiping blood on my sleeve. "A traitor steals slush funds for vacations and calls them training." This time it was a slap. I ricocheted off the spice rack, chili powder spilled, drawing a red flight path across the counter. I shut off the stove, hands shaking more from adrenaline than fear. "Turn off the recorder," he growled. "You're recording, aren't you?" "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "But I should be." My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. O'Hara, laundry room. "Don't be alone." I didn't answer. "My mother's been due D 20 years, Ethan said, almost laughing. "One word from her and you're on a psych eval, credibility gone. What do you even have? A cheap memory card and a dirty boot." He knew there was a thing. He didn't know where. I shifted my stance, drew my ankle under the chair, tucked that knotted lace into the shadow. Tradecraft 101. When someone states a partial truth, don't deny the whole, seize the narrative. "Ethan," I lowered my voice like I was handling a skittish source. "Step out of this. Don't let them use you as a shield. I'm not here to destroy your life." "I don't need saving," he said. "I need you to shut up." He wrenched my wrist, skin burned like touching a hot exhaust. I slid my heel, turned my hips, broke the hold, no counter-strike. In the oven glass I caught my own reflection. Hair in a regulation bun, a dark slice at my lip, eyes wide and dry. The soldier held the line, the wife fell back to the rear. "You're scared," I said. "Not of me, of the truth clearing base security the right way, on the right form." He dropped my arm, picked up the BBQ frame, brushed his thumb over my smiling face, then tossed it back in the trash. "You're going to CID tomorrow. They'll invite you to help. If you're smart, you'll hand over everything." "No," I said, crooked smile, iron taste. "At 5, I run 5 miles. At 7, I submit a signed report. Not one bite passes through the hands that created it." His eyes narrowed. Something flashed there, not anger, pain. The shock of a man learning he can't live in 2 worlds without someone, his wife, naming the truth. "Get out of my house," he said. "This is my house too," I answered. "But I'll leave. I don't linger on a burned LZ." I rinsed the blood, unlaced the boot, peeled back black tape, dried the micro SD, slipped it inside my inner pocket. The phone buzzed again. Laundry room. 10 minutes. I grabbed a light jacket, cracked the door. "You'll regret this," Ethan said, like a prayer turned inside out. "I've already done enough regretting," I said. "But not for telling the truth." Outside, pine and damp concrete. A bare porch bulb poured a small square of yellow over the steps. I locked the door and moved through the quiet row of base housing. Somewhere a TV tossed a football game across a wall. The flag had come down at 1,700, folded tight. The base slid into disciplined silence. The laundry room opened under my hand. Detergent and humidity. Dryers hummed. A unit t-shirt tumbled in water like a flag under surf. Mrs. O'Hara sat on the folding table, silver hair tied back, paper cup in hand. Her eyes held the particular gentleness of people who have already lost something. "Thought you weren't coming," she said. "So did I said, sitting beside her back against the warm dryer panel. "Your hands are shaking," she said. "Your eyes aren't." I set the taped bundle down. She didn't touch it. She just looked. "That thing doesn't belong near someone who's afraid," she said. "It belongs near someone who's angry in the right way." "I'm not afraid," I said. "I'm hurting, that's different." "Both make people decide," she tilted her head. "What are you calling this operation?" A coin ticked inside a washer, metronome steady. In my mind, the pieces lined up: emails, Lorraine's approvals, trainings on the beach, split receipts, formations answering a whistle. "Blackflag," I said. "Its name is Blackflag." Mrs. O'Hara smiled. "Then this is your first flagpole." She opened a tin of safety pins and spare buttons. I slid the card inside. She stashed the tin at the bottom of a hamper, the one place no one reaches unless they really mean to. "Tomorrow morning I'll pass it to a safe pair of hands before IG touches it," she said. "You going home tonight?" "I'm not sleeping there," I said. "I'm going to run. I need Cadence to sort the pieces." I dabbed antibiotic on my lip. It stung like cold water after a live fire range. When the dryer cut off, the quiet fell like a blank sheet of paper. Outside, the air had cooled. Stars pushed through a tear in the clouds like rivets on a fuselage. I followed the chain link, past the basketball court and the faded unit crest. Gravel chirped under my soles. The pieces shifted into place. Cleanup Friday, LRS signature, a shadow account hiding in tidy invoices. I didn't know who printed that email for Ethan, but I knew who approved the money. And I knew I wasn't the wife in a kitchen taking punches anymore. At the corner, a black cat hopped off a sedan hood and vanished. I inhaled, then launched. Footfalls drummed the track, heart matched cadence, lungs opened like a chute. By mile 2, the blood on my lip had dried. By mile 3, wet leaves sweetened the air. A low voice inside me called Cadence over and over. Blackflag, Blackflag, Blackflag. When I looped back to the stoop, the kitchen was dark. Ethan's shadow crossed the window once and was gone. I popped the Jeep, pulled my go bag, PT kit, pressed ASU, 2 pairs of socks, a chain of custody SOP, a dented Nalgene. I wasn't running away. I was repositioning fires. In the rear view, my face sat under a street lamp, neither pretty nor fierce, just awake. I locked the car, gave the door one last look the way you glance at an LZ with flames still licking the edges, then turned away. The night zipped shut. Hands in pockets, I walked toward the gate, toward a cold world with its own brand of fairness. And I had a name for the war. It started with a thin hiss from the S2 network printer at 05. 17 on a Monday nobody likes. Hallway lights yellow and tired, yesterday's coffee souring in the trash, base grass soaked with dew. I came in 30 minutes early, with a PT excuse in my pocket, and stood in front of the chunky gray box under a poster that read, "Do the right thing even when nobody's watching." I popped the maintenance panel, slid in a service USB, and ran a little audit script I'd tuned all weekend to quietly copy print logs and out-of-hours metadata. No handbook teaches this. You learn it on night shifts and from cyber best practices that sound like prayer. If you want to know where money goes, listen to what comes out on paper. That morning, the printer told a story. Every Friday after 20:00, batch jobs. 3 hosts repeating training office, admin clerk, and a ghost IP not on inventory. Content was redacted, of course, but the metadata sang. Page counts, subject hints, temp folder names. File stems like It in Myrtle, Reconcile Misc, Raffle Night Ops. XLSX per Deem C12. I sat with my black notebook and drew arrows between hosts. On paper, they looked like tracers. From It in Myrtle, I stepped into the booking system for a project called Night Ops Training. The brochure showed a beach resort and a glowing pool, 3 days of multi-agency training, but the content and instructors' fields were blank. The invoice, though, listed banquet audio-visual. Someone had rented microphones and speakers to teach silence. My chair creaked as I leaned back. It felt like studying a sand table map. The metadata arrows pointed to vacation in uniform. I drifted through supply with the right salute and scanned the night ops invoices on a phone app. Every approval chain ended at a familiar name, Lorraine Reed. That night in the barracks, I flooded an Excel sheet. Date, amount, vendor, approver, certifier. I color-coded. Blue for travel, yellow for dining, red for luxury. The red bloomed like oil on water. Cross-referencing vendors with business registrations showed different names sharing the same P.O. box and a hotline with rotating last digits. A mentor once told me, "Smart people don't sign often. They sign at the end." Lorraine never booked rooms. She arrived in the last line like a god with a stamp. A glossy raffle night flyer became my match. The QR code led to a fundraiser page. In the page source, a tiny script pinged a shared spreadsheet. In a tab labeled Reconcile Misc, columns marched, ticket amount notes, AV, tip, driver. The final cell was a neat 0, too perfect. I poured in the hotel numbers and balanced them. Every month bled a few hundred to a few $1,000s, always absorbed by Misc. Always paid on Friday afternoon, same window as the 2000 print batch. People trust Monday to make them forget. I don't. I sketched the Intel map, raffle right arrow Misc, right arrow vendor right arrow P.O. box. At the top of the triangle, Lorraine. One night Ethan drifted past my desk. "Up late over numbers again," he smirked. "Don't make yourself the whistleblower. In this world, they die first." "Fakers die faster," I said. He looked away, eyes sunk. I knew I was walking a tightrope tied to my roof. I needed proof that didn't wobble. Internal reconcile memos showed opening balances that didn't match the previous month by a few cents, old school obfuscation to feed Misc. I printed 2 months and laid them side by side. The trailing digits formed a pattern that was too regular. In accounting, pretty is fake. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't do this, child." 4 words. I copied them verbatim into my notebook. Lorraine had moved a piece. In the shared drive, I found ledger final. XLSX surgical, vendors spelled right, training support in the notes. Last modified Friday 2012 by a generic account. Right beside it, ledger backup old. XLS messy columns, misspelled vendors, cash, thank you gift. 1 ledger to show the pentagon, 1 ledger to live by, a dual book system. I printed snapshots, sealed them in a brown envelope, and slid it behind a loose panel in the women's laundry room. My fingers shook, not from fear of being caught, but from knowing I just planted a mile marker on an invisible march. Back in the lot, Ethan sat in his pickup lit by his phone's blue glow. "What do you have?" "Official documents and official duty." "You think you can beat my mother?" "I don't need to beat her. I need to beat the numbers." He laughed, dry as cardboard. "The numbers work for her." I walked away through the petroland tar smell of the base at night. In my breast pocket, a tight checklist, verify dual ledger independently, chase the P.O. box, ID the ghost IP, unmask the generic account. Each item a neat square I ticked like a weapons safety check. 2 days later, a hotel clerk emailed my work address. There'd been no class, only a request to open a meeting room and leave it empty. The invoice showed funds to vendor A, then a partial refund to vendor B, same P.O. box. The money didn't vanish, it went sightseeing. That evening I opened the 2 ledgers again, one ragged, one ruler straight. I drew a line down the page, boundary between 2 worlds. One side BBQ smoke, white wine, social laughter. The other toner, margins, and tiny ants of type. Misc, tip, driver. I folded the notebook and wrote a single line along the edge. Dual ledger locked. In the window glass, a woman stared back who no longer needed to be believed. Her numbers would speak for her, and they had already started to talk. Weekends turned the PX into a small-town fair. Country music dripping from ceiling speakers, barcode scanners chirping, kids begging for candy, the squeak of new combat boots on tile. I slipped in with a small pack and a faded ball cap, just another officer grabbing an electrolyte bottle and a couple MREs. On the surface, I blended. Under the surface, every sense was turned up. Lorraine has ears everywhere. Even where people buy diapers and web belts, rumors move faster than radio. I was pretending to choose between 2-unit t-shirts when a warm, gravelly voice behind me said, "Size S, too small. These kids bench more than I did when my husband had the squadron." I turned. Late 50s, silver hair tied back, sun-faded jacket with the unit patch, a bit of fray on the cuff, Mrs. O'Hara. Her name lives on 100 past BBQ flyers. The lemonade pourer, the be nice, you're in uniform whisperer. The smile that keeps a crowd from boiling. Her eyes today weren't a hostess's. They were a veteran's, someone who's seen what others pretend not to. "I know you," she said, voice dropping as if through coffee foam. "Mercer, S2, the one who stays after hours." My fingers tightened on the pack strap. "Meaning?" She tipped her chin toward the coffee corner. "Not here, too many ears." The PX coffee nook faced the lot, wobbly white tables, plastic chairs, the machine shrieking like a rotor on idle. I sat. The coffee was so weak it needed sugar to find a pulse. She stirred slow. "I was a clerk once. Fake ledgers have a smell fresh ink and hurry. Blackflag smells like that." Her gaze held mine. Final signature, Lorraine Reed. The name fell like a rock into my chest. I'd drawn the triangle, Lorraine sat at the top. Hearing someone else say it made the drawing go cold. "How do you know the word Blackflag?" She smiled. "Crow's feet mapping, Thanksgiving's long gone. Friday night, office lights on late so I could print raffle lists. A call slid through a cracked door, clean up Blackflag, click, been listening for it ever since." "Why help me?" The question was out before I could tidy it. "Because I kept quiet once," she said, voice dropping a key. "A warrant officer friend ate a misuse of funds charge she didn't earn. The real arsonists toasted in D.C. I said nothing. She lost rank, lost home. A kid changed schools 3 times. Silence has a price. I'm done paying." She fished a flat, nicked key from her jacket and set it between us. Locker 42, family housing, laundry. No cameras. Sunday mornings, the moms swarm, staff don't look closely. If you're carrying something that shouldn't be on your person, put it there. I'll rotate checks. And don't keep everything in one place, layer your storage. Lose one node, keep the others. The metal cooled sweat on my palm. "You trust me." "I trust data," she said. "And you look like you have it. Trusting people on this base is a luxury item." A private shuffled past with a toddler in a beanie-stitched army brat. Outside, a gust rattled the stick flags. Their plastic edges buzzed like angry bees. 2 women whispering about a slush fund over weak coffee and donut grease. Funny, if war didn't so often start our plastic table in an inbox on the edge of an invoice. "From now on, never carry originals," she said, ticking SOP on her fingers. 1 compressed to micro SD, 1 off-domain cloud backup, 1 paper snapshot in locker 42. Your chain of custody has to be clean. Time/place/hands. If you want IG and JAG to treat it seriously, the paper needs to win before anyone opens their mouth. Relief clogged my throat. Someone finally spoke my language, the cold grammar of process. Fear sat next to it. This wasn't a kitchen fight anymore. It was headed for people with stamps. Lorraine doesn't pick up paper herself, she added, softer. She uses shell vendors like bags. Money goes sightseeing, stops at 3 bags, and comes home clean. Hit the joins. You got any duplicate P.O. boxes yet? I nodded. Yes, and a hotline that rotates last digits. Hold on to that and don't telegraph. First whiff she'll throw a psyche eval at your face. Breathe. Choose a field you control. Field. The word flipped a breaker. I detoured by stationery, bought a stack of blank raffle tickets and a bottle of stamp ink. The cardstock rasped under my thumb. In my mind, the projector in my Jeep blinked awake. A public game was coming. Not today. I left first, cut through sports, pretended to test wrist wraps so the cameras had a clean angle. At checkout, a young woman's eyes hung on me, a fraction long, nude polish fitness band. I shifted my bag to the other hand and studied the ceiling speaker like I was shazamming the song. At the door, cold air braked me. Noon light splashed white across the lot. Ethan leaned on his pickup, cigarette pinched between 2 fingers. He didn't blink, the way pilots don't blink before takeoff. Shopping take that long. He mashed the butt on the truck skin, smiled thin. Or do you just like coffee with old ladies? Unit T, raffle tickets, bad coffee, I said, buttoning my jacket. Mom asked about you, he said. She worries. The kind of worry that texts don't do this, child from an unlisted number, I asked. His eyelid twitched the way a rotor shivers in crosswind. You're sensitive, you're tired, go home. I'm not tired, I said, I'm your wife. And my home isn't where people go strolling through a 2012 Friday print log. His eyes dipped. You think you understand the system. I don't need to understand them. I understand numbers. He started to speak. I walked past. Smoke and gasoline tugged my sleeve for a second, then let go. I zigzagged toward family housing, low roofs, a playground with sun-shipped swings. The laundry room glared cold, dryers whirring. Detergent punched my nose like pool chlorine. Locker 42 waited at the end. Paint flaked, shackle closed tight. The lock popped with a tiny click like a second hand stepping forward. Inside, a square of dark, a bunker. I slid out a tin, tucked in a micro SD with the dual ledger bundle and 2 printed screenshots, Myrtle invoice and the Reconcile MISC tab with that perfect 0. 00, pushed the tin against the back wall, and pulled an old towel over it like throwing dirt over a temporary grave. Lock, exhale. I took one close photo of the lock, one wide of the row. Chain of custody isn't a punchline. A text to Mrs. O'Hara, 42 set. She answered with a flag emoji, no words. Back at my desk, I turned the mental map into a list. 1, off-domain cloud backup with 2 FA on a non-2D device. 2, a metadata-only packet, printer login/out, ghost IP, 2012 window in case content leaks. 3, book JAG via a direct channel, not Lorraine's friendly gatekeepers. 4, prep the public field, next week's squadron BBQ with a QR bait and the mini projector. Each line a neat square I ticked until the pen clicked against the notebook's edge. Night slid down. I sat alone under a warm desk lamp and tested the raffle stamp. Night Ops raffle. The circle bled, oval and ugly. Again, cleaner. I wondered how many perfect circles had been stamped on clean paper to turn lies into acceptable minutes. I set the stamp aside, palmed the pocket-sized projector, checked the battery, fired it at the wall. A reconciliation table snapped into focus, black letters like a blade. I dimmed it. Not yet. The field has to be right. Email pinged. Subject, read Night Ops question, no class, meeting room opened and left empty. AV was a hold. We moved the remainder to vendor B as requested. Please don't use my name. Attachment, a payment screen. The recipient, same P.O. box. I laughed without sound. Another join lit up. I killed the screen, opened a window. Night air carried wet pine and the off-key a cappella of a few bored privates. Somewhere a night flight helo saw the sky. I touched my chest, counted a steady beat. From P1 to now, one thing kept me from shaking apart: discipline. It keeps your hand steady on a lock, your mouth shut when baited, your eyes on the numbers when tears show up like interrogators. Before I left, I wrote a note along the notebook's edge where only I would look. Blackflag equals paper battlefield. Pick light, no shadows. I double-locked the office and moved down the hall. Carter from CID leaned texting at the corner. He gave a casual nod. I matched it, the kind of greeting used when every sentence might already be recorded. Outside, sodium lamps dropped yellow halos on the sidewalk. I palmed the wire fence. Each weld felt like a service day, a shift, a PT drill, a cold dinner in a plastic tub. Soldiers don't often pick the battlefield. Sometimes the battlefield picks the right soldier. By the time I reached the housing lot, the night had thickened. My house sat silent. I didn't go in. I popped the Jeep, checked the projector, the raffle stack, the stamp, the marker, and a decoy USB with a curated clean ledger for side-by-side reveal if needed. Everything in place. I shut the hatch and leaned until my spine found that rare, honest inch of rest. Wind threaded my collar, carrying porch laughter from the next row, wives swapping stories on concrete steps. I breathed out. P3 ends here. A sponsor, a safe box, and a stage plan. The rest will happen under string lights at a squadron BBQ, where people think all you do is raise a glass and smile for photos. Hands in pockets, I tipped my head back. A few stars pushed through thin cloud like chalk flecks on a black shirt. Wait, I said to no one in particular, to myself, to the numbers, to the name I'd given it. Blackflag. This time I'll haul it down in public. Squadron BBQs are that special brand of fake happy. Red, white, blue pennants staked around the grass. Bluetooth speakers toggling between country and classic rock. Kids orbiting inflatable bounce houses. Smoke fattening into a thin fog over the grills. On the lawn, pilots with Ray-Bans parked on their foreheads heckled each other while deadlifting Bud Light cases. Their wives lined up potato salad beside a hotel pan of baked beans. Strands of cafe lights jittered in the wind like housebroken constellations. I killed the engine at the edge of the lot and checked the mirror. ASU razor straight, ribbons aligned, collar sharp as a blade, not a hair out of place. I wasn't here for ribs. I was here to blow something up. The air dipped half a beat when I stepped out, the kind of thin pause Americans call awkward. I heard the whispers. Is that Kai? Thought she was on a psych eval. I didn't turn my head. I walked straight to the raffle table by the ticket swap and pretended to study the prizes. A mini Weber grill, a Home Depot gift card, and a night ops training raffle getaway that tasted equal parts funny and bitter. The lieutenant's wife running the table smiled, stumbling a little because my dress blues didn't match the sea of t-shirts. "Want to buy some tickets, ma'am?" I nodded and took a neat stack, 10 neon squares. When she pivoted to the next customer, I slipped in a few black and white handouts for a QR bonus game. Looked like a kid's enrichment thing, whose QR pointed to the clean ledger site I'd built over the last few nights. I'd tested it on 3 browsers, in a sandbox detached from everything I own. No trace back to me unless they mined to bedrock. And if they did, that only strengthened the chain of custody I planned to show. Ethan stood under an oak's shade, polo tucked, beer in hand. He didn't look at me, but the angle of his jaw said he'd clocked my entrance. Next to him was Major T, the storm landing storyteller with a Zeus smirk. They said something and let out a small, lazy laugh the wind dutifully carried off. I bought a hot dog, took 1 civilian bite, then drifted to the perimeter and checked the site dashboard on my phone, traffic curving upward. Little dots, iPhones, galaxies, scanning the QR. Their screens filled with my perfect ledger, tidy totals, every misc. Sanitized into harmless notes, vendors filed like instruments in a sterile or. A lieutenant colonel clicked his tongue. C. Transparency. The word fell out like a peppermint, cool and useless. I counted to 10. 11:17. The wind veered. I set my plastic cup down and opened my hatch. The palm-size projector sat in its fabric cradle, battery full, HDMI tied to a media stick with the show packed offline. I pitched the tripod toward the white sheet someone had rigged for movie night. Kids were supposed to watch Finding Nemo later. I didn't ask permission. I powered on, focused, and through the first slide. Blackflag in small sans serif in the corner, and in the center, a split spreadsheet. The party's volume dropped like someone pinched a knob. Kids quit yelling because their parents turned as one. Ethan straightened, eyes narrowing on a sunless evening. Slide 2, 2 ledgers side by side. Left, ledger backup old. XLS sloppy notes, misspelled vendors, lines for tip/driver/thank you gift. Right, ledger final. XLSX glass smooth totals, training support in the note field. I didn't speak. I let the auto advance do the work, 10 seconds a frame. A gray-haired officer fake coughed, aiming for humor. Who's pulling this little? He didn't finish. Slide 3 hit. Scans of invoices, Beachview Suites, banquet audiovisual cocktail service. Vendor A receiving funds, then a portion refunded to vendor B. Same P.O. box, same registered agent. I'd annotated in the corner. Same P.O. box, same agent, alternating refunds. A young wife clapped a hand to her mouth. Somewhere a beer can hissed open, painfully out of place. Ethan started forward, then stalled when Major T brushed his elbow. We looked at each other through the projector's beam, and I saw exactly one thing in his eyes. The first moment he believed I had something he couldn't control. I stepped closer to the screen without a mic, voice pitched for a tidy brief. On the sheet are 2 books, one to show, one to live by. On paper, this is interagency training money. In life, it's resort packages, PR jackets, transport tips, and late-night legs. Every approval trail lands at one repeating signature. You'll see it on the next slide. Click. Lorraine's signature carved across the page like a knife mark. The most American exhale, Jesus, threaded through the crowd. A spouse said too loudly, Lorraine, read, the one from Do D. I didn't nod or shake my head. Next slide. The Friday 2012 printer log, the generic account that saved final, metadata matching the S2 batch window. A third grader tugged at his mom's sleeve. What movie is she showing? The mom didn't answer. I didn't linger. I drifted back to my bumper and let the pictures and the silence do their job. The smell of fat on flames stayed thick, but the taste in my mouth was metal. That live fire ranged second when the round is already gone, and physics owns it more than willpower does. A major approached, voice church soft. Mercer, what are you doing? I answered like I was reading a checklist. Maintaining chain of custody for financial evidence. Establishing public witnesses. Preparing to hand off to IG/JAG. His mouth opened and closed. Americans have a face for this moment, not a good look. Not for me, for them. The speakers swapped chicken fried for take it easy. The song couldn't resuscitate the air. I killed the projector, folded the tripod, and stowed it. The white sheet glittered a weak gold in the cafe lights. Suddenly a headstone for something called family-friendly image. A little girl snuck me a star sticker and whispered, "You look like Captain Marvel." I smiled. Not tonight, kid. Tonight I'm the one throwing the breaker. Lorraine didn't show. She rarely does crowds. She works hallways, not lawns. Blackflag didn't need her there. It needed the whisper line that runs ahead of her like scouts. I could hear it going, down the buffet, through the folding chairs, around every beer. What is this? No way. If that's true, gossip moving like pre-radio field messengers. Ethan finally came over, not at a polite distance, angled so no one thought we'd stage a brawl in the grass. You just did something stupid, he said, voice tight. I just did something right, I said. You know who my mother is. I do. That's why I didn't send an email. He cut a look at the dark projector. You turned my unit's party into a public trial. I kept my eyes on the cafe lights. No, I turned it into a pre-brief for an investigation. Everyone hears a brief. Everyone remembers. That's enough. He wanted another line, then dropped it. Major T was watching, so were a few wives. Their faces weren't for me. They were for him, to see how he carried himself when the story slipped from his hands. He swallowed, stepped back half a pace, and murmured, "What you don't get is, sometimes in the military, survival is knowing when to shut your eyes." I've never closed my eyes on a night runway, I said. I won't close them on a ledger. He turned away, spine ironed too straight. In that second, I knew our marriage had entered radio silence. I left while the lights still blinked. The interior roads were ink dark, headlights washing over a peeling "Welcome Home Airman" sign. On the passenger seat sat my brown evidence pouch, paper snapshots of the dual ledgers, the printer log, the vendor P.O. box map. I idled near the PX, listening to the clock tick while the paper smell rose dry from the envelope. I heard Mrs. O'Hara's voice from days ago, the safe spot whisper behind an old soda machine. You carry truth like a rifle, clear it safe, and always know where it is. I'd see her soon, but tonight I needed the wave I'd kicked up to run its course. My phone buzzed. A new text from an unlabeled number. Stop it. You don't know who you're up against. No period. No name. I didn't answer. I opened notes and added to my timeline. 23:07 public reveal at Squadron BBQ witnesses. ~60 projected dual ledger plus invoices, reactions, silence, whispers, denials. Under it, a line that wasn't evidence but strategy. Cut the brake line. On the way back to the barracks, I ducked into the women's laundry. Metal door, detergent funk, damp towel breath. I stacked a plastic chair, climbed, and loosened the wobble panel behind dryer #3. I slid a USB into the cavity where I'd stashed desiccant backup #4, only SHA 256 hashes of the full package and a chain of custody abstract. Exactly what you need when someone says you made it up. Panel on. Hop down. Wipe dust on my pants like a grease monkey in an old movie. If CID asks me tomorrow, where did you keep it? I'll say, I didn't keep it. I multiplied it. By the time I hit my lot, the cars had thinned. North Carolina night threaded steel frames and made the big flag twitch in quick, tired bursts. I tipped my head back and found enough stars to count, remembered land nav nights as a private when a sergeant taught me to read the sky for direction. I didn't need stars now. I had paper and ink. The black arrows I'd drawn had become a bridge. On this bank, BBQ. On the far side, Article 32. The river between, Sid. Upstairs, I loosened the bow, unhooked my shoes, and laid the laces flat on the desk. The micro SD, smaller than a fingernail, rested quiet inside one lace's core, the pebble that had followed me through PT loops, a kitchen fight, and a parking lot standoff with my husband asking, "You think you can beat my mother?" I palmed it and set it next to my notebook. I wasn't shaking. I was tired, the ruck march kind, where each step guarantees you're nearer the line. Before lights out, I opened the journal and wrote a single line. Blackflag midpoint, public set piece executed. Opponents lost control 1 beat in public. The AC purred steady. A small shiver walked my spine, not fear, but the knowledge I'd crossed a one-way road. I wasn't going back to the brownie baking potluck spouse. From now on, every word and glance was testimony. I set the pen down. In the wardrobe mirror, a woman looked back with a yellowing shadow on her cheekbone from last week's hit, a crease still pressed at the collar, eyes no longer hallmark soft. I told her quietly, "We don't have to beat people, we only have to beat the numbers." I flipped the switch. Outside, the streetlights stretched into ledger lines that ran out of sight. Somewhere at the end of one of those lines, Lorraine's signature waited. In my dream, I drew a black marker straight and true across it like a firing line. In the morning, I'd move. Ig, jag, gow. Tonight I slept with my ASU hanging near and a curl of BBQ smoke still trapped in the collar. The smell of a family party turned battlefield, and of a black flag newly raised in a lawn of warm light. Morning came overcast, like a blank form waiting for a signature. I just cinched my laces when the doorbell drilled through the quiet. Two men in civvies on the porch, shirts tucked, black shoes, laminate creds tucked under jackets. One held a manila envelope. I didn't need to touch it to know. CID wants to talk. "First Lieutenant Mercer," the taller one asked, voice flat. "Affirmative. We need you to come down to CID. Bring your CAC. Phone stays here or goes into evidence per receipt." No debate. I locked up, slid my phone into a clear zip the agent provided, signed across the seal. In the back of the Gov sedan, I watched the pines dip in a neat military nod as the door closed, and the world went soft through tinted glass. CID smelled like overworked AC and freshly shampooed carpet. A long hall, tired fluorescence that blinked every few minutes like a sleepy eyelid. A crooked report fraud poster on the wall. They walked me through the magnetometer to a windowless interview room. Low ceiling, metal table, 2 chairs, a black dome camera staring like a hawk's eye. I set my CAC on the table, looked like someone had unpinned my badge. S.A. Collins, his name strip read, took the seat opposite and flipped a folder. The other agent leaned against the wall, arms folded. Collins rattled through Article 31B, writes like a status update. I asked him to slow down. He stared a beat, then read at a pace the law could live with. "Do you want a JAG present for questioning?" "I do," I said. "I won't be answering substantive questions about the financial materials right now. I'll confirm identity and unit." Collins' smile was paper-thin. "You seem to know the process." "I'm S2, I said. "Process is the only thing that treats everyone the same." He slid a brief. "We received reports you disseminated financial material in a public setting, the squadron community event last night. That could constitute an information security issue and conduct out of bounds." What I showed were screenshots of paid civilian invoices and internal reconciliations. I said evenly, "My chain of custody is clean. I'm preparing to submit to IG and JAG." He rolled his eyes. "You really like 3-letter words." "I like truth," I said. "The 3 letters are just how it travels." Tone shift. "We've got internal reports you're under chronic stress, showing paranoia toward co-workers and family. Command can direct a psych evaluation for unit safety." I looked into the camera like I was looking up at a starless LZ. "I'll comply with any lawful procedure, but any evaluation waits for IG intake and JAG consult. That's my right." Silence spread like a cloth. The wall leaner pulled up a chair. "Mercer, gentler this time, we're not your enemy." "You're not," I said. "Fake numbers are. They tried the storytelling route, marriage, Ethan, my mother-in-law. Do you feel everyone's against you?" I stripped my answers like field stripping a rifle. Few words, no adjectives, only dates and facts. "Why a family BBQ for your reveal?" "Because it's public witnesses within unit bounds, because everyone does it needs oxygen cut off, because silence is complicity." Collins sighed. "You realize you're putting yourself against the system." "I'm asking the system to pick a side," I said. "Law or slush." They gave me 10 minutes. In the restroom, the tap ran metal and chlorine. The bruise on my cheekbone had gone yellow, the fatigue under my eyes had gone honest. I took the allowed plastic pen from my pocket, opened my black notebook, and wrote a single line on the margin, "Wait for IG." I breathed 4 hold 4 out, night LZ breathing. Walking back in, I heard Mrs. O'Hara in my head. Don't win big, win by discipline. Back at the table, a consent to psych eval form waited, signature box winking. Collins slid a plastic pen across. Voluntary looks better in a file. We can do it this afternoon. I'm not signing, I said, voice level. Any mental health evaluation gets considered after IG acknowledges receipt and after JAG consult. I'll comply with a lawful written order with counsel present. He smiled without joy. You love making simple things complicated. Paperwork was never simple, I said. Trying to make it simple is how you grow Blackflag. They pivoted. Any other storage devices besides your phone. I've delivered paper snapshots to the appropriate office as required, I said, not saying locker 42. Digital copies go directly to IG/JAG, no one else. You don't get to pick who sees it. I have a duty to prevent evidence from being handled by conflicted parties, I said, each word honed. Lorraine Reed's signature is on those approvals. I won't hand materials to any channel she could touch. The room shrank. The wall leaner's finger tapped a dry tin beat on the metal. 10:42, 1 hour 12. Time is a whistleblower's other enemy. It sands down resolve with waiting. I closed my eyes for 1 second, pictured mile 3. Hurt, steady, keep cadence. Collins closed the folder. We're done for today. Do not discuss this interview with anyone except legal counsel. If you do, expect additional charges. Understood, I said. I'll wait for IG and JAG contact. They walked me out a side door. The gray sky had cracked into fine rain, drops slid down the glass like italic letters. In the sedan, a new text from an unknown number, still no punctuation. Don't fight your mother-in-law, she will destroy you. Screenshot. Filed to intake/threats with time, number, status. Evidence doesn't have feelings, it only needs a proper shelf. Back at S2, Carter from CID leaned with a paper cup, neutral face. Heard they pulled you in, he said, not a question. I'm fine, I said. They want a psych eval. Figured, he said, scanning the empty hall. They'll push a command directed through command to speed it up. You need an IG receipt to block. Use this. He slid a sheet toward me, a trimmed receipt of complaint template IG uses to timestamp intakes. Fill it, scan it, email here. He scribbled a functional inbox. Even if they don't reply fast, you've got a timestamp. Why help me? He shrugged. If we let process bend today, it bends me tomorrow. I ate a sorry sandwich and locked myself in a small side conference room. I wrote a clean summary. Time, place, what happened at the BBQ, description of witnesses, no kids' names, attached artifacts, SHA 256 hashes, and the conflict of interest reason not to route through certain channels. I checked each number, each period. When I hit send, only my index finger shook, the reporter kind of tremor, not the victim kind. Second email to JAG. Request for legal counsel. Cite Article 31, right to remain silent. Ask for an early slot. No adjectives, only money flow and timelines. At 1500, the commander's secretary called. Psych eval scheduled 0800, day after tomorrow, behavioral health, building 12. I stared at the IG receipt still warm from the printer. I've submitted to IG, I said. I'll appear at building 12 with JAG or request a delay until IG intake is acknowledged. Silence. I'll relay, she said and hung up. That night the barracks felt like a house after a wedding reception. Confetti gone, chairs stacked, ghosts of laughter in the beams. I jogged the track, each footfall a nail driven into a frame. In my head, I checked the defense line. Locker 42 good. USB hash behind dryer hash 3 panel good. Sealed paper snapshots in the brown pouch good. IG email sent, offline copy saved. JAG reply pending. I repeated the line I'd written that morning. Wait for IG. 3 words like 3 bolts keeping a door from getting kicked in. Back in my room, I killed the overhead and switched on the warm desk lamp. Outside the window, night was thick as a black folder. I opened the notebook and added a line beneath the morning one. Psych eval, pending. Do not sign, demand counsel. Demand written order. I flagged the page with a small red tab, warning color to some, discipline to me. Before sleep, I cracked the closet and touched my ASU hanging neat. A ghost of BBQ smoke still lived in the collar. I thought of that white sheet, those faces heavy with everybody does it. I'm not afraid of CID. I'm afraid of easy. Easy is fertilizer for Blackflag. I pulled the blanket up, slid the notebook under the pillow like a private tucking home mail. Outside, wind ran the barracks line, bringing pine and late laughter from someone telling a story twice. I breathed even and drilled the command in my head, wait for IG. Then added tomorrow's task, call JAG, bring the numbers. Morning at Fort Liberty came up like a thin blade. No glare, just sharp enough to make you blink awake. I wore OCPs pressed flat, slid my black notebook into the sleeve pocket and left the barracks at 0712. I didn't turn toward S2. I cut for the admin block instead, a glass cube with a stone entry like a bank vault. At the guard desk, I handed over my CAC, signed the log, and wrote meeting administrative review. In the Army, if you move like you belong, the doors usually don't ask questions. The IG conference room sat at the end of a second-floor corridor, frosted glass and cold steel handles. Inside, white light, a long wood table, 2 wall screens. A JAG captain waited already, hair cut blunt, bare face, eyes like a still pond. Across from her, an IG investigator in a black cardigan, name tag crooked, the practiced calm of someone who's heard too many bad stories to mistake volume for truth. At the far end, a chair reserved for GAO. They joined by video. The screen glowed a little brighter than the room, a small flag in their backdrop. Lieutenant Mercer, JAG nodded. Have a seat. I set my brown envelope down. That dry, papery smell flashed, clean and a little bitter. The IG opened a notebook. For the record, she said evenly, this is an administrative intake and preliminary review. You can decline anything outside administrative scope. You have counsel present and may request more. Do you have materials to submit? Yes. I treated the envelope like a rifle check before a live fire. Paper snapshots, a side-by-side of ledger backup old. XLS and ledger final. XLSX, differences marked. MISC. Consolidations clustering at Friday 2012. Invoice scans. Myrtle Hotel, banquet audiovisual. Transfer to vendor a then partial refund to vendor B. Same P.O. box / same registered agent. Printer metadata. Friday night batch, ghost host, generic account touching final. Money map, shell vendors, shared P.O. box, hotline with rotating suffix. Threat log, anonymous texts. Don't do this, child. Don't fight your mother-in-law. All time-stamped and hashed. Chain of custody. Locker 42 photos, time / place / hands, and a description of backups, withholding hiding spots to prevent tampering. JAG tugged on nitrile gloves and paged through without commentary. IG plugged in a USB that held nothing but hashes and a time-stamped PDF bundle. On screen, GAO leaned forward and screen-clipped for exhibit preliminary. Why the BBQ? JAG asked without looking up. I needed public witnesses outside the approval chain, I said. No classified content, only paid civilian invoices and internal fundraising reconciliations. IG tapped her pen. Conflict of interest basis for bypassing normal routing. Lorraine Reed, GS15-D, is the final signatory on the chain, I said. She's also my mother-in-law. I have reasonable cause to believe some base channels are influenced by her. The air thinned like the range does right before fire. Show the ledger, JAG said. Slide 1, 2 columns, old left, final right. I ringed vendor rows where totals were massaged pretty. MISC, draped like a velvet curtain. Slide 2, the Myrtle invoice, suite number in the corner, banquet AV mid-page, repeating P.O. box on the left. I zoomed, refund to vendor B, and drew an arrow to same agent/P.O. box. On screen, GAO nodded. Textbook carousel, not sophisticated, just leaning on logistics fatigue. Timeline, JAG said. 2012 Friday, and the metadata lines up with the final save. The raffles QR calls a sheet labeled reconcile MISC with a tidy 0. 0 total, perfect in the fake way. IG wrote, balance by MISC, rotate surplus through controlled vendors, request server logs. JAG finally looked up. They floated a psych eval. Yes, I declined to volunteer and am waiting on IG intake and JAG counsel. I'll obey any lawful written order with counsel. Good, she said, short and clean. We'll issue a hold memo on any psych eval pending IG's preliminary. If command pushes, they go through us. GAO cut in. Request a data call vendors, P.O. boxes, agents, 6/4 of refunds. Start Myrtle, expand to Vegas and D. C. Club will stitch against federal cross-checks. Threat texts, IG asked. Anonymous, punctuationless, I said. Hashed, logged, preserved, likely internal. Direct order from Lorraine, JAG said. No direct memo, I answered. I have her signature at the end of approvals and a final save at 2012. I have a vendor network that doesn't grow wild. Someone cultivates it. That's enough to open a formal investigation, IG said. We'll secure a preservation order, mail, share drives, printer, firewall logs. S6 will freeze backups. Any purge equals destruction. JAG added, we'll send command a memo, no psych eval on Mercer without counsel and need justification until IG issues a preliminary. Her materials fall under attorney-client where applicable. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders dropped a millimeter. Not a win, just not alone in the wind tunnel anymore. I had people holding the process with me. We broke for 10 minutes. I leaned against the hall wall, the AC droned like a far rotor. A young woman in uniform passed, slowed at the fading yellow bruise on my cheek. She didn't ask. She saluted, perfect and quiet. I returned it. Sometimes a salute is how soldiers say, I believe you. Back in the room, email already fanned out. In it, Blackflag preliminary, CC Gao and Jag. Subject line cold as a blade, preserve all records. Targets listed. S2 printer, admin share drive, generic account email, weekend VPN logs, night ops schedules. JAG typed memo 2, psych eval hold, citing article 31 and right to counsel. On the record, IG said. Hit the beats, no adjectives from first flag to the BBQ. I marched it like PT cadence, Myrtle A4, audit script, 2012, raffle QR, dual ledger, shared P.O. box, threat texts, BBQ projector, Lorraine's signature slide, CID the next morning. I finished with a line from my notebook, wait for IG. IG nodded. Sufficient. JAG closed the folder. You'll get written notices today. Discuss content with no one but us. If command presses, call my duty line. GAO added, if you have a hand-drawn map, photograph with a scale and timestamp. Mind maps anchor timelines. I packed slowly, slid the notebook back into my sleeve pocket and stepped into the hall. Sun fell in a clean stripe across the tile. I blinked into a kind of light I hadn't trusted for a month, the kind that lands on paper and says procedure has started. Discipline, the thing I breathe, was finally printing on the page. I walked past last night's lawn. Smoke gone, poles for string lights still speared into the dirt, cords coiled in quiet loops. The white sheet was rolled and leaned against a wall beside a half-folded chair. I ran a finger down the canvas, rough under the skin. Last night it was a screen. Today it was evidence living in 60 memories. My phone buzzed. JAG. Subject, counsel assigned Mercer, K. Action. Psych eval hold memo sent to command. Next, schedule with IG for sworn statement if / when ready. PDF saved to Blackflag / legal. IG, subject, preservation notice issued. Next, access request to S6 / finance scheduled. GAO, subject, data call template attached. Next, fill vendor / PO box table 90 days. I sat on a folded chair, opened my notebook. Under wait for IG, I wrote, Psych eval frozen. IG open. GAO data call. Next to Blackflag, I sketched a small black triangle and crossed the tip, a private symbol for half-mast, not an ending. A signal the board has tilted. That afternoon, I checked locker 42 in family housing. The room smelled like bargain detergent. A dryer clacked the stray coin rhythm. The tin was intact. I added hard copies of the JAG/IG memos, insurance for anyone who'd accuse me of imagining a process. Lock, photo, log, discipline, 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 the drumbeat under every run. On the way back, I stopped at the little chapel by the fence not to pray. I sat on the steps and stared through stained glass at a cross and a pale dove. I didn't have words for God tonight. I had a notebook and a strip of sunlight. Those were enough. By colors at 1,700, Fort Liberty had turned bronze. A young sergeant lowered the flag. He folded it like he was lifting a child. I stood off to the side and gave one clean salute, gratitude not for the flag coming down, but because, in my file, a black flag had started to inch down too. There's still CID, still Article 32, still the dirty counterswing. But today the big gear turned the way I needed. I headed for the row houses. Each step felt like tightening bolts on the frame we'd built. IG, JAG, GAO. At the corner, a black cat cut the last wedge of sun and slipped into the hedges. People say black cats are bad luck. I say bad luck only finds you when you don't have a process. Night fell. I hung my OCPs, set my ASU ready, just in case I had to stand straight in front of someone tomorrow. On my desk, a red sticky read. Filled GAO table 90 days plus hash. PM, JAG sworn statement. I killed the light and lay on my side. Before sleep reached me, I heard a small steady sound in my head, the gentle stop of a printer somewhere far away. Not mine. Preservation orders. I smiled once, small, private. Blackflag still flew, but the pull cord had slid into my hand. For the first time on this paper trench line, I wasn't alone. Tomorrow I'd count again. Tonight I let the silence hum like a hymn. The Article 32 room lives in a low gray building where the fluorescent lights are calibrated to feel like nobody's side. No jury. No gavel. Just a preliminary hearing officer, foe, a recorder, a legal clerk, and rows of folding chairs lined up like an inspection. I wore my ASU razor straight, shoes glassed. JAG on my left, a brown evidence pouch on my right. No cafe lights tonight, no BBQ smoke, only procedure. Before the hour, bootsteps beat time in the hall. Ethan appeared in a flight suit, posted at the far end without looking at me. A couple of squadron officers stood near him, shoulders wound too tight. Lorraine didn't take a seat inside. She parked herself in a side room with a civilian attorney, smart enough not to meet the room head-on. But the oxygen in here still moved on her name. The PH show read rights and purpose, voice as flat as a runway. Objective, determine whether probable cause exists to refer charges to a court-martial. He warned against speeches. Stick to facts, exhibits, law. The red light on the recorder winked awake like a small, patient eye. My JAG stood first. She laid a clear cover binder on the table and staked ground with numbered posts. Exhibit 1, side by side, ledger backup old. XLS VS ledger final. XLSX. Friday 20, 12 clusters of MISC. Vendor/vendor be share a P.O. box and a registered agent. All roads end at the GS15 signature of Lorraine Reed. Exhibit 2, network printer log. Friday 20, 12 batch. Generic account touches final. Exhibit 3, Myrtle invoice, banquet AV, with carousel refunds. Exhibit 4, community event photos of the dual ledger projection. Witness list ready for sworn statements. Exhibit 5, anon threat texts preserved with hash and timestamp. Her voice didn't rise, it anchored. Opposing counsel came hard with the label gun. A disgruntled junior officer creating context. Old is a draft, MISC is legitimate. Projecting at a BBQ was destabilizing. He said destabilizing like he was pasting a sticker to my forehead. The PH show raised a palm. Make Exhibit 6 part of the record. The bulging brown envelope slid to the center. Email, server pulled under the IG preservation order. He put on glasses and read slow enough for every syllable to land on tape. Subject, cleanup Friday. Time, 1941 Fry from training admin at to FinSec at ops assist at. Keep MISC at 000 on the reconcile page. Update final before 2015. No drafts in the share drive. LR. The room went dense. From the back row, a swallowed whisper escaped. We're screwed. I heard the recorder click one small scissor cut through the silence. Clarify LR. The PH show said. Opposing counsel hesitated. No proof that's Lorraine. My JAG tapped the binder. Exhibit 7L, R. Initials by Lorraine Reed in contemporaneous memos, header data showing the delegated account under her office, and timestamps synchronized with the 2012 final save. Taken with X. 2-4, we have timeline, right arrow directive, right arrow action, right arrow result. They pivoted. Even if there were bookkeeping issues, that's administrative error, not fraud, no intent. Intent isn't measured by adjectives, my JAG said, voice soft as a scalpel. It's measured by hiding the trail. No drafts plus 0. 0 reconcile is an instruction to defeat review. GAO identifies a carousel pattern, a to-be refunds. Same P.O. box. That's not a stumble, that's design. The PH show asked for the slide. The wall turned to numbers, vendor columns, amounts, MISC. Cells pooling on Fridays, arrows jumping to refunds, and that repeated P.O. box. Looking at it was like running the same road I'd trained on, each red X another mile marker. My pulse stayed mile 3 steady, hertz, holds. Call the witness, the PH show said. They swore me in. My voice sounded like it does inside a flight helmet, contained, present. I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. JAG kept it clean. Why a community event for the reveal? I needed public witnesses inside unit bounds but outside the approval chain. No classified content. I showed people the difference between two ledgers. Were you directed by anyone? No. Personal vendetta against any individual named in Blackflag. I have a duty, not a vendetta. Cross came in with the old playbook. Have you experienced domestic violence? Objection, irrelevant and harassing, my JAG said. Sustained, the PH show said after a beat. Opposing counsel slid to, do you have a personal motive due to your marriage? My motive is professional, follow law and process. I report numbers. Numbers don't have in laws. Carter from CID testified next, short and surgical. The preservation order, server pulls, printer logs, no opinions, only chain and timestamps. Then GAO via video, saying pattern and risk indicators more than any adjective. Keystrokes on their end became the room's metronome. Midway, the side door sighed. Lorraine entered in a light gray suit, collar razor folded. She sat in the last row, half in shadow. We didn't look at each other. The room did. The kind of look that used to lift her onto a quiet pedestal D.C. knows how, now edged with doubt. Her lawyer got a narrow slot. My client denies all allegations. The initials L.R. denote a department tag, not an individual. Reconcile to 0. 00 is good housekeeping. My JAG smiled like sunlight off a blade. Only if your housekeeping includes sending tens of thousands of dollars on walks through 2 vendors with the same P.O. box on the same Friday while the final prints. The kindness in her tone cut deeper than a shout. We broke 15. I stood by the water cooler. Ethan came over and stopped at a distance small enough for one person to pass between. "What do you want? You tore the unit down in public." "I want law to work," I said. "If a unit stands on a slush fund, it deserves to fall. You're burning every bridge. I'm burning the rotted ones." He flinched like I'd set a hot tool on his palm. "My mother will survive. I'm not hunting people," I said, tired but square. "I'm hunting a pattern." Back inside, the PHO asked for closing positions. Opposing counsel talked in loops about an overzealous young officer, administrative missteps, and community harm. People love hiding behind community when the receipts are ugly. I kept still, fingers on a pen like it was a metronome. My JAG didn't do a speech. She threw one last slide. A straight timeline. Lost Myrtle A4 right arrow audit script right arrow 20. 12 log right arrow QR raffle right arrow dual ledger right arrow cleanup Friday email right arrow projector on the lawn right arrow preservation order right arrow server pull. Intent equals cleanup. Means equals misc. / carousel. Opportunity equals Friday 2012. Control equals L. R. The rest is detail. The PHO wrote for a long time. The kind of long that tells everyone the story has already cracked and only the numbers are still standing. When he looked up, his voice stayed flat, but the words fell heavy as lead in a metal tray. Preliminary finding. There is probable cause to believe financial fraud and concealment occurred with respect to night ops training funds through a dual ledger mechanism, MISC. Adjustments to 0 reconciles, and carousel transfers through vendors with the same P.O. box. I recommend referral of certain individuals, including M.S. Lorraine Reed, G.S. 15, Do D, and 2 officers in finance/training, through the appropriate charging channels, federal referral for civilians, preferral of charges for service members. Simultaneously, I recommend lifting the allegation of disruptive conduct against one LT Mercer and implementing whistleblower protections as authorized. The recorder clicked off. For a second, it felt like the room released a breath it had been holding all month. Chairs scraped. Paper hissed. Someone swallowed too loud. Ethan bent his head, knuckles whitening. Lorraine didn't move. For the first time, I saw something rare on her face, blankness, a knife-thin slit where light might get in. Out in the hall, the air widened. My JAG stacked our binder and said low, "Not over, but flight path is locked." I nodded. At the door, a young soldier, the same one who'd clocked the fading bruise on my cheek yesterday, slipped me a paper cup of water. I sipped. The tap tasted almost sweet. "Thanks," I said. She grinned. "Ma'am, your numbers make me want to switch to finance." I laughed for the first time in weeks. It sounded clean, smokeless. I passed the flagpole. The big flag ticked in the breeze like it was tired of being aloft. I saluted, not for show, but for discipline. Then I opened my notebook on the same margin where I'd written wait for IG and psych eval frozen and added, "Clean up Friday, read aloud." Masks off. I folded the book and slid it into my inner pocket. On the steps, my footfalls doubled, one echo from concrete, one from my chest. both steady. In the lot, the light thinned to a workable gold. My shadow stretched beside the jeep. Blackflag still flew, but the rope had slipped through a pulley and dropped to half-mast. From here out, less my war, more the system's. My job now is the only job I trust. Hold discipline, hold the numbers, hold silence where it amplifies. In uniform, sometimes the quietest thing you do carries the farthest. The first morning after the hearing, Fort Liberty felt scrubbed, an empty range at first light. Colors went up at 0800. The anthem floated exactly on time, and nobody said BBQ or spy. People just moved half a step slower when they passed me, like noise might jar some column of numbers running between my temples. Orders found me at noon in a stiff envelope. I was transferring out of S2 to a smaller analytics training cell on the edge of post, busy enough to need a careful brain, far enough to stop casual collisions. I signed, peeled my nameplate off the metal locker, wrapped 2 chipped ceramic mugs, one burned with old coffee in a t-shirt, and eased them into a banker's box. Before I left, I rested a hand on the desk where I'd once stacked 2 ledgers and ruled a line straight between them. The wood was cold and flat, like nothing had ever happened. That's the barracks trick, erase every trace but the one under your skin. The new shop was half the size, windows to a patch of lawn with a few tired lavender shrubs. The briefing room smelled like paint, the whiteboard gleamed. The OIC, a Nebraska captain with lake blue eyes and a blunt, kind voice, slid me a schedule. Brief the female trainees this afternoon. Ethics and paper trails, make it yours. I nodded. That was the permission I needed. Tell the story the way the numbers want to be told, not the way gossip wants to hear it. 15 young women filed in tight buns, pencils parked behind ears, curiosity braced with that base-wise caution that knows even jokes have teeth. I didn't flash anyone's face, didn't throw rainbow graphs. I put up a living map, a simple stream of money touching 3 points and returning to itself. This is a story, I said. It can happen anywhere. You don't need names, you need patterns. When a ledger looks as perfect as an ad, suspect it. When MISC sits where a long, boring description should be, ask. And when an email says 0 out the reconcile by 2015, leave no drafts, that isn't good housekeeping. That's will. I paused and scanned their faces. In a few eyes I saw myself at the beginning, too straight in the spine, so eager to be right you forget to breathe. You'll hear everyone does it, I said. They believe silence is the concrete that keeps a system upright. That concrete is mixed with mud. Discipline is the real mix. Then softer. When you have to choose, pick discipline before kindness. Kindness without discipline is a thin blanket in a storm. After Class 3 lingered under the pretense of chain of custody questions, mostly to confirm I was made of ordinary matter. One whispered, "Ma'am, I heard about the BBQ. I wish I'd been there." I laughed. You don't need to stand on the grass to see. You just need to read the right line at the right time. In the afternoon, I swung by the family housing laundry room. Metal door heavy, notices taped on crooked. A "Please clean the lint trap" poster with a doodled smile. Locker 42 still wore its chipped paint, the lock still behaved. Inside the tin, the micro SD, the snapshots, printed IG/JAG memos intact. I added a small slip. Preservation order executed, time-stamped. I sat on a humming washer and let the vibration drum like a 2-mile heartbeat. A few spouses came in, spread towels, joked about grass stains on kids' pants. One pressed a warm cookie into my hand. "Everyone says you've gotten skinny. Eat, hero." I waved it off. "Don't call me that." She blinked. Then neighbor. We all laughed, buttons hitting tile, light, but the sound filled the room. After dark, Carter texted, "Ethan's access is suspended pending outcome. Not in the first charging package, likely a separate board." The message hit the water and rippled out, then went flat. I stared at his name longer than necessary and locked my phone. Part of me felt lighter. Another part held still. The way a road looks after a storm. Debris cleared, mud streaks lingering. 2 weeks later, I got a sealed slot for a visit to the temporary military confinement site on the perimeter, holding for those awaiting transfer. I went alone in plain OCPs, no rank showing. The gate was gray steel. Concertina wire picked up the light like dew on thorn. Inside, white light, bleach over metal. I dumped my pocket litter into a plastic tray, cleared the scanner, took a visitor badge. The desk sergeant nodded the way only people who have seen enough know to nod. No judgment, no surprise. Ethan sat in the visitation room between 2 yellow lines. No cuffs, no jumpsuit, just gray sweats and a fresh cut. He looked thinner, the jaw bones sharper, the eye sockets hollowed like parentheses. He stood when I came in, tried to smile and lost it before it reached his mouth. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice rasped the way it gets after a long flight. "I'm here for discipline," I said. "Not hate, not pity." He nodded at the tabletop. "I'm not in the first batch, but I'm not flying, maybe never." A beat. "Mom's in D.C. Council says it'll be fine." "Fine is the word people use when the truth is ugly," I said. "It doesn't fix ugly." He looked at me straight for the first time in months. The question he'd never asked was there. "Why didn't you look away?" "Why not let it go?" he said quietly. "Why not close your eyes?" I shook my head. On a night LZ, closing your eyes is death. On paper, too, I've stood in both places. We sat with the quiet. I smelled phantom BBQ smoke on an ASU collar, saw the white sheet blink under a projector, felt a locker key bite my palm again. All of it marched me into this white box with distance measured by 2 yellow lines. I finally admitted a thing I'd avoided for weeks. I'd walk the wife's road as far as it went. The rest is a soldier's road. "I'm sorry," he said at last, words he'd owed me a long time. "Not for Mom, for me." I nodded. For once there wasn't a wave breaking in my ribs. Just a flat surface where I could see my own stance reflected, steady. Outside, the sky had that brushed steel sheen. I walked the fence and let my hand skim the welds. Wind carried pine and the cadence call from somewhere far, boots hitting earth, voices in unison. The path back to the training center was quiet. I cut past the basketball court where a few of my trainees laughed after a shot rimmed out. They waved. I waved. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's a shared grammar of discipline. That weekend I went back to laundry, not to stash, to unstash. I opened 42, opened the tin, took the micro SD and the old prints, and sealed them in an envelope labeled, "Return to IG close out." Mrs. O'Hara leaned in the doorway with a paper cup. She nodded, a small smile like someone watching a parade step perfectly in time. "First case I've seen end without the smell of burning," she said. "Only paper." "Good," I smiled. "Paper lasts longer than smoke." Her hand touched my shoulder, soft as a period at the end of a sentence. "That's enough, daughter." That night I taught another class, this one titled plainly, Blackflag Case Study. I opened with a question. If the person with the power is your family and the numbers disagree, what do you do? A few eyes wobbled, a few mouths pinched. One hand went up. "I choose the numbers." The room laughed lightly, the scent of dry erase and new fabric, the smell of clean beginnings. I closed with something personal because the room needed it. One day you may have to walk away from a kitchen, from someone you once loved, and walk toward a printer. Go. In a barracks, courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's just keeping step when someone tells you to freeze. Late, back in my room, I opened the black notebook. Page 1 still carried the words I'd written with a split lip, Operation Blackflag. On the last page I wrote, Blackflag lowered. And under that, a small line, straight, unshaking, "I carry a different flag now, the white flag of peace." I slid the book into a drawer. Outside, the streetlight sprinkled gold on grass-trimmed barracks short. Somewhere on post a printer slept. Somewhere near D.C., a rubber stamp sat in a dark drawer, stripped of the power to mix mud into concrete. I killed the light. The dark didn't threaten anymore. It felt like the break between shifts. The break a woman takes after learning how to use discipline to open doors most people won't touch. Tomorrow I'll wake at 5, run 5 miles, drink bad coffee, and show up for class on time. I'll keep solving the unglamorous equations of military life. A missing signature, a stray dollar, a CC forgotten. In each one a thin streak of Blackflag remains, like smoke after a single shot. It reminds me the truth doesn't holler, it counts. And as long as I count right, I keep my peace. At 22:00, the barracks clock cracked one dry chime. I smiled into the dark. For the first time in a long time, I didn't dream of a white sheet under string lights. I dreamed of a morning flag line, breeze light, colors coming down slow and square. No applause. Just the whisper of fabric on hands doing the fold, small, exact. Proof that everything has found its place.